Hi, my name's Conrad, and I'd like to welcome you to the FreshBooks webinar for new users. So before we get started, I'd like to do a quick sound check. So can you please use the Zoom Q&A panel to let me know if you can hear my voice, and we'll get started. Okay, so now that I know everyone can hear us, I have a couple things to go over quickly before we jump in. So today's webinar will be recorded, so if you can't stay for all of it, it will be available on our YouTube page within the next 24 hours, and a link will be included in the follow-up email you'll receive later. If you do have questions during the webinar, that's why I'm here. So please use the Zoom Q&A panel to ask me your questions during the presentation, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So now that we've got the housekeeping out of the way, let's get into it. So years ago, when our CEO Mike saved over an invoice he'd been working on for hours, he decided there had to be an easier, less frustrating way for business owners to invoice clients and get paid. And so with that slip of the mouse, FreshBooks was born and easy invoicing became a reality. Since then, we've grown a lot. Around the world, millions of business owners just like yourself now use FreshBooks. So today's webinar is going to be presented by Renee and is designed to be a tutorial for the most used and fundamental features in FreshBooks and how they work together. If you would like to learn more about the advanced features that FreshBooks offers, we also run a more detailed FreshBooks 201 webinar each other week at the same time. So in today's webinar, we're going to cover creating clients, creating expenses, creating invoices, recording payments for those invoices, viewing reports, and how to learn more in FreshBooks 201. Because this is an introductory lesson, we will only be covering the basics of using your FreshBooks account. If you've been using FreshBooks for a while now and you want to learn how to get more out of your account, our 201 webinar runs every other Thursday afternoon at 1:30, and you can sign up for next week's webinar at freshbooks.com/webinars. This session dives deeper into the more advanced features of FreshBooks, like adding discounts and payment schedules to invoices, as well as tracking your time to rebill to clients at a later date. We'd love to get your feedback on today's webinar, so I'll be posting a link in the chat panel at the end of the session. Please use this form to let us know what we can improve upon in future webinars. One last thing, if your FreshBooks account doesn't look like what you're seeing on your webinar screen, you may be using classic FreshBooks. Today's webinar will not be covering that platform, so if you need a more personalized demo of FreshBooks Classic, please just give us a call at 1-866-303-6061 or email us at support@freshbooks.com. So thanks again for joining us, and here's Renee with today's webinar.
Thank you, Conrad, and welcome everyone again to the FreshBooks 101 webinar. So as you can see, once you log into your account under the my.freshbooks.com website, if you don't have this bookmark, I highly recommend that you do because it will take you directly to your login page. So once you log in, you land on the dashboard. So we're just going to quickly go over the different widgets that you can see once you log in. So you can see an overview of your outstanding revenue. This is basically going to show you all of the outstanding invoices or overdue invoices that you currently have and a list of the clients and the amounts that are currently outstanding. There's also a little link towards the bottom that allows you to jump ahead and quickly view those invoices. Next, we can see the outstanding, and it looks very much the same. And the quick link there for you to view which invoices are in that little pop-up. Each widget also allows you to filter by a different currency. So if you bill your clients in multi-currency, you can actually toggle from one to the other on the widget, and that will show you the information. Keep in mind that all of the widgets and reports in FreshBooks are separated based on currency. We have our total profit widget, which will basically show you your profit for a date range. You can filter it for a month or quarter, and again, by a different currency. When you click on each point on the actual graph, it'll give you a quick overview of the income and expenses that came out for that month. Then we have our revenue streams. This is how you track money coming into FreshBooks, and that's using the invoicing feature or our other income feature, which tracks things like in-person sales or online sales. And when you click on the circle graph, it actually gives you the quick link to view the invoices that are allocated for each as well. And we have our toggle here where you can do it for a date filter and for the currency. Then we have our spending widget. So this will basically track or give you an overview of the expenses coming out of the account. So money out, you will see a list of the categories and the amounts that were allocated for each category. And again, if you hover over, you can kind of see what the breakdown was for the expense categories. And you can also toggle it for the date range and the currency. Next, you have your unbilled time widget. So as you can see, we're not covering this today, so there isn't any projects to unbilled time, but it quickly gives you an overview of any projects you have ongoing and then any time that is outstanding for it. So the dashboard is really helpful when you just want to check out a quick overview of how your business is doing. At the top right of majority of the pages in FreshBooks, there are action steps. So we have the big green button here, which is your create new button. And it basically allows you to jump ahead and create new information in the FreshBooks account, very similar to what you would do on the blue navigation bar on the left. For today's webinar, we will be focusing on the blue bar. And you also have the invite option to invite your team members. I would highly recommend that you click on this link towards the bottom where you can learn more about the team member access and see permissions. It gives you a nice little breakdown of what each person can and cannot do, as well as what their dashboard looks like. So now that we've reviewed the dashboard, we're going to go ahead and look at our settings. So the settings is basically all of your admin functionality. So you have things like your company profile, which you can update. You have where you can get started with accept online payments, bank connections for importing your expenses into FreshBooks. So if you're looking to do any admin features in the account, click on this settings gear here or your profile picture, and it will open up this little window here. So first thing we're going to do is look at the items and services section. So items are what we create to be added onto the invoice level. And as you can see, I have a long list here, and some of them have taxes and some of them don't. So these are the default items that will be available when I go to invoice my clients, and I can constantly add to this list. If you're coming from another software, we actually have the option for you to import items from a file. So check this out. We also have our link to the FAQ page if you want to see what this looks like and how it works. But if you're coming from somewhere else, you can easily import your items into FreshBooks. Services are what are allocated for the time tracking so that you can add it to your projects. So we're going to go ahead and create a new item. So I have this new package called the Rose Gold package that I'm going to be working on for children's birthday parties. So I'm a photographer. That's what I'm going to call the package. I can put in a description if I want to, and then I can put in the rate of what I want this item to come in for on the invoice level. Based on where you're located, you can also apply taxes. As you can see, I have a long list of taxes already. So once you add a tax, it will be remembered. You can also add new taxes, and then you can apply it when you're ready. So I have this new package. I'm going to charge them $500. That's my GST added. FreshBooks also has a limited inventory tracker. So you can basically put in the amount that you have in stock. Every time you add an item to the invoice, it will count down from whatever the number is that you have. And then you can pull the item sales report to kind of see how many or what you're making from each item that you sell. We're not going to track inventory for this. So I'm just going to go ahead and save it. We get the confirmation at the top that it's been saved. And at the bottom of every page on FreshBooks, you'll notice that we have the archived and deleted folder. So if you ever need to clean anything up or clean the list up on the invoice, if you've already been using it for a while, you can come to this page, check the box to the left of items that you want to clean up, go to bulk actions, and you can easily archive and delete. If you've archived an item and you want to reuse it down the road or deleted it, you can simply go into those folders. It'll tell you which folder that you're in at the top. Check the box to the left again, and then you get more action steps to either undelete or unarchive. And this is the same experience on the invoices page, estimates page, expenses page. That's basically how you would archive and delete in FreshBooks. So now that we have our item created, I'm going to go ahead and create my client entry. So on the clients page, you can see an overview of the recently active clients that you've either created or edited in the account. You can also see, similar to what you saw on the dashboard, the overview amount or overdue invoices amount, the outstanding, the in draft, and you can actually click on them to see a full list of the invoices. Towards the bottom, I have my clients list organized. I can actually choose how I want to sort this list by just clicking on the header. So I can organize it by organization name in alphabetical order. You can do it by the status of the invoice, what is outstanding. So if you're looking to resort the list, you can just click on those headers and it'll sort the list for you. On the bottom right, you can also choose how many items you want per page. So if you wanted to see more than 30 clients at a time, you can easily go ahead and change it from here. And this is true on all of the other pages as well. So now we're going to go ahead and create a new client. So I'll be working with Conroy. I'm just going to put his last name. If you had a company name for them, you can type it in at the bottom. The most important part is the email address. So conroy@company.com and the actual address for them. So the more information you type in the client profile, or this is the primary contact card, the more information will be available on the actual invoice. So I'm just going to quickly fill this out. Perfect. So I have their address, email. I'm not going to put in any phone numbers for them, just their name. And then we have the client settings on the right. So basically, if you want to send out any reminders, you can do that, late charge fees, and currency and language. We're just going to go ahead and save them. They're brand new. I don't want to set up anything like that for them. Confirmation at the top. And they'll also show up in my recently active. So I can click on them to open it up. And this is what the client profile looks like. So in addition to sending the invoice to Conroy, I also want to send it to his wife. So under contacts, I'm going to go to the plus button and I'm going to add in his wife's name, just the initial for the last name. And then again, the most important part, the email address of where you're going to be sending it. Notice there's no address option in the secondary contact field. So it's just name, phone number, and email. And then we're just going to go ahead and save that. So secondary contacts is basically anybody else that needs to receive information. You can basically select just the primary or both of them to receive the details. So we'll look back at this once we have some more details filled out for Conroy. But for now, this is what the client contact looks like. And you can actually jump directly from the client section to create new information in the account. So you can also do the client statement or edit the client from here if you need to make any changes. So that's all located in the clients section. And once you set up any settings for the client, it's actually defaulted. So we have the client created. Before we jump ahead to create the expenses and invoice, I'm just going to put up a quick poll and I'll be right back. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for taking part in that poll. So now that we have our client created, we're actually going to jump ahead and we're going to track some expenses for this client. So on the expenses end, actually, there was one other thing I wanted to show you for clients. So similar to the items, the More Actions tab at the right of the clients page actually allows you to import clients from a file. So again, if you have a list of client information that you need to bring into the account, you can simply choose the file to upload into FreshBooks as well. And you can click on the Learn More to be directed to our FAQ page for that. So a lot of ways to bring information into FreshBooks easily so that you don't have to manually create that information. So when we go to the expenses section, similar at the top right, we have the More Actions. You can actually import expenses from a file. So you can log into your bank usually and get a CSV file of your transactions for a date range, and you can easily import it into FreshBooks. Check out the FAQ page for this. It has basically screenshots and steps on what that experience looks like and some troubleshooting if you're encountering any issues. So the expenses page will also show you the recently updated expenses that you have in the account. So whether you edited or created a new expense. And then on the list, you'll basically see if it was assigned to a client, and there's some different, excuse me, there's some different statuses for the expenses as well. So if it's assigned to a client but not added to an invoice, we'll see it's unbilled. If it's been billed back to the client, the status will be billed. And then if it's just a regularly tracked expense, not assigned to anybody, it actually just has no status. It's just an expense that you're tracking for your business. So let's go ahead and create a new expense. So this is the advanced expense settings. So we're going to go ahead. I bought some balloons for Conroy and his wife doing a photo shoot for their daughter's birthday. So I purchased this from Crazy Balloons. So I'm going to go ahead and create this merchant. So this is a merchant that I have not used before. I can choose to add in a description. I want to put in the grand total of the expense. And then you can choose to add taxes. So FreshBooks will back calculate the tax amount that came out of the grand total. And then you want to make sure that you categorize this as well. So the categories that have the icons beside them are the default parent categories that are available in FreshBooks. And the little ones with like the L shape are also the default subcategories that are available in the FreshBooks account. You'll notice that some of them I have an edit option beside it. These are custom subcategories that I've created on my own for my business so that I can track my expenses to them. So if you scroll through this, you'll see the full list of categories that we offer in FreshBooks. But if there's a category that you're looking for that's not available, then all you need to do is start typing in what you want the category to be. So maybe I want this to be party supplies. So I'm going to type it in. You'll see the create option, similar to when we created the merchant. And then you just click on create. And we can organize this under one of the parent categories in FreshBooks. So I want this to be organized under supplies. And then everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and save this new subcategory. Once it's saved, it'll be available to be added onto my future expenses. And if I click on this list again and type in party, you'll see that it's there with the option to edit. So if you ever make a spelling mistake or you need to change the name, or you want to change the parent category, just click on the edit option and you'll be able to edit it. You can also delete it. So if it is just for a one-time invoice and you will no longer be using this category, you can go ahead and delete it. It will not affect any past expenses that you've already categorized as party supplies, but it won't be available on a drop-down list for any future expenses. And that's basically the categories that we have and how you would create a custom subcategory. And then we're going to go ahead and assign this to the client that we created. So as you can see, I get the full list of all of my clients or projects. I can just go ahead and type in the client we just created. You can choose to mark it as billable so it shows up on the invoice level, or maybe you just want to assign it to the client but not actually bill it back to them. You can just uncheck that option. If we had a receipt image, which you can drag or include here, you can choose to include that on the invoice, and you can also choose to add a percentage markup if you're billing it back at a higher rate to the end client. I want to mention that FreshBooks also has a mobile app, which allows you to easily take a picture to drag your receipts onto it. You still have to manually fill out the expense card, but it's easier for you to take a picture and apply it to the expense. We want to make sure the currency matches the currency that we set up in the client profile. And you also have the option to mark it as cost of goods sold, which basically changes where it shows up on the profit and loss report. So you can always mark expenses in this category as cost of goods sold, or just do it for this one expense. So I'm just going to leave that. Everything looks good. So we're going to go ahead and save this expense. Perfect. So the confirmation card at the top, we're going to see our expense in line, and it has the unbilled status. So you can also easily add expenses on the expense list. So you just click on new expense. We can choose one of the merchants that we've used in the past. So I had to get some things from Black Studio. You can go ahead and type in the category. This time I'm just going to choose supplies. You can also backdate it if this was an expense I forgot to track yesterday and put it in. Again, we want to put in the grand total of the expense and then apply any taxes. And then we can assign it to the client again. So just search the list, put them in. You can attach the receipt, add a description. If you need to do things like change the currency or mark it as cost of goods sold, just click on the link at the bottom right and you'll be taken to the advanced expense settings that we saw earlier. So just like that, very easy to just put all of your expenses in line. And we have the same categorization at the top of the page. So right now mine is organized by date, but you can also choose to organize it by category, merchant, or any of the headers at the top here. So now that we have our expenses tracked, if you wanted to pull it up on the list, I highly recommend that you check out the advanced search option. You can basically filter for date range, particular merchant. If your bank account was connected, you can filter it for a particular bank account. And you can also just track any statuses here if you want to further narrow the list. Perfect. So now that we have our expense created, we're going to go ahead and create an invoice. So on the invoices page, looks very similar to what we've already been looking at. We have the headers at the top to kind of jump ahead to see what's overdue, what's outstanding, are recently updated, and then the full list towards the bottom of the invoice, and then our archive and deleted as well. So there's a lot of different ways in FreshBooks to do the same thing. So let's go ahead and create that invoice. First thing we want to do is choose the style of the invoice that we want. Currently, I have it as the simple template. So this just allows for a smaller logo at the top, and all of my company information is at the top right. Or you can choose the modern template, which has a larger logo, and then the company information is kind of like on the banner, and then the details are to the right. You can also change the color or choose a different font. So first thing we're gonna do is add the client, so Conroy. All of the settings you have for them will show up at the bottom right here. And then we're gonna add in the item that we had in the item section, so rose gold package. I'm also gonna add in my expenses. The top of the line, you'll see you have the add option. I don't have any projects for them, so I'm just gonna select the expenses. So all done billed expenses for this client. I wanna pull it in and add to invoice. So there are my two expenses. You can choose if you want to add in a description after the fact or make any edits once you've added in the line. We can also just add a line from one of the options that we already have in the account. So if I wanted to just select one of the other options, I can just type it in directly how much I put in for that. And then add the taxes again and apply. We can also choose to add a percentage discount. So this is my first invoice with them. So I want to set them up with a 10% discount for the very first. You can also request the deposit if you want them to pay a percentage or flat amount upfront. And you can also set up a payment schedule if you want to break it up in a percentage or flat amount payment schedule. Also, you want to set up your terms. So this is any important information you have about your business that you want the client to see, such as payment information or any details about your business that you want them to be able to see. And this will be available on all of the invoices. The notes section is optional, so it will only be for this one-time invoice. It's not actually moved on to future invoices. And you can also add attachments towards the bottom for any documentation you need the client to see. The date of issue will always be today's date. The due date, you can actually change it to be due on the date of issue or after a certain amount of days, or a custom date range on an actual calendar date. A little trick I want to show you as well is if you chose to do it on a calendar date, you can just click on the month and you can easily jump ahead instead of using the navigational arrows. Same thing you can do for the year, so it's a little bit faster. So we're going to leave it after 30 days. The invoice number, I currently have a letter and number sequence. So this will just be remembered for future invoices and they'll be counting up. If you're just starting, you can actually change this to anything you want it to be, and FreshBooks will just remember it going forward. And that's basically our invoice in a nutshell. So we're going to go ahead and send this out. I have my primary contact, Conroy, but I also want to send this to his wife, which is a secondary contact. So I'm just going to select her name. If you wanted to go to third person, you can actually just start typing in. Maybe I wanted to go to Roxy as well. So at company.com, you hit enter, and this will also add another person for you to receive the invoice. You can see the quick preview of what it will look like once they receive it. And you can also choose to create a shareable link, which is basically a direct link to the invoice that will allow them to view the invoice from text message, or you can send it outside of FreshBooks for them. So everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and send the invoice. Perfect. So I get the notification it's been sent to 3 people, and then my invoice shows up in the recently active section. So now that we have our invoice created, I'm just going to put up another quick poll, get a drink of water, and I'll be right back so we can look at the reporting. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for taking part in that poll. So now we're just going to jump right ahead. So now we have our invoice created. Let's just jump over to the report section and see what the information looks like. So as you can see, I have my top 5 reports that I use on a daily basis at the top of the page. And you can easily switch them out by just unchecking or checking off the star for other reports. And then you can just scroll through and see the other reports that we have. So the invoice and expense report, as well as payments reports, are available on all of the pricing plans. The accounting reports are the new reports that we have, and they're only available on the Plus and Premium and Select plans. So those are the top tier pricing plans. So you have things like your general ledger, your balance sheet, bank reconciliation, some more details that are available, like the retainer as well. But all of the basic reports for what we're touched on so far today are available on the Light plan. So we're going to look at our invoice details report first. So it's just located at the top. Every report in FreshBooks allows you to apply filters, and the filters are located on the right. So first thing we can do is set up a date range that we want to look at. So I'm going to go to custom. I'm going to use our little trick, and I'm just going to choose for today's date. So February 2021. And I'm going to choose it for yesterday and today. February 25th. You can do issue date or pay date. All clients, or I can look at information for a particular client. So I want to look at just for Conroy. You can do multiple clients as well if you want to look at their information. So I'm going to leave it for Conroy. You can put in the invoice status if you just wanted to see paid invoices or just what they have outstanding. And then again, you can filter it for different currencies. And then we're going to apply. So at the top of the page, you'll always see the total invoiced and then the amount paid. And then you have kind of a breakdown towards the bottom on a client level to kind of show like what the total I invoiced them was the amount paid was, and then every line item on that invoice, as well as the status of the invoice. So this is just on a very specific level because I'm only looking at one client, but you can basically see this information for all of your clients. You have the option to export the report to Excel. You can print it out as well. I do recommend if you're looking for more details, such as like the expense report, that you export it for Excel because you have a bit more filters there and a bit more information that you can see. You can also send the report directly to yourself or directly to your accountant so that they're able to view it. And you can always put in a little personal message in the email body as well if you wanted to send out the report. So this is basically the functionality or action steps you have to do on all of the reporting in FreshBooks. So if we go back and look, we're going to look at the profit and loss report. So profit and loss basically show you a list of your sales and then all of the invoicing that you've created for the client. And you have the option to click on the links to drill into the report to see more information. And then the less expenses section will basically show you all of the expenses that you have for a given date range. And you can actually click into those as well to kind of see what the breakdown was for those numbers. And then the filters are just on the right side here again, very similar to how we saw in the invoice details report. So that's basically the reports in a nutshell of what we have. If we quickly look at the accounting tab, this will be on the top 2 tier pricing plans. You kind of see what is available in terms of your accounting and what your accountant will have access to if they're helping you with your reporting. So as we've been going through the reports, I actually received correspondence from Conroy, and he was able to pay the invoice that we sent to him. So we're going to go back to the invoices section, and we're going to open up the invoice that they sent to us. And I'm going to show you how to add a manual payment. So again, we're going to look for the action step at the top right. And we're going to go to add a payment. So very easy and straightforward. You can either put it in for the total amount, or you can edit this to maybe say paid me 500 and he'll pay the remainder after. You can put in what the method of payment was. So they sent me a check. You can backdate it if you're late to add in payment to an invoice, or just leave it for today's date. And in the payment notes, you can put in any other information like the check number. And I can choose to send my client a payment notification email, kind of just saying payment was received on invoice so-and-so, and then you can just add the payment. Once the payment is added, a couple things will happen. So the status of the invoice will be updated because it wasn't a full payment, it's partially paid. And when you scroll to the bottom, you can see the payment record that was added. And you can change this at any time. So let's say, for example, there was an issue with the check for some reason, or I made a mistake with the amount. You can just click on it. You'll get the edit payment option, and you can actually just change whatever was changed. So if I wanted to put in the total amount instead, make any changes, and then you just save it. The status will update. And you can also choose if you want to bulk actions to edit or delete. So nothing is set in stone. You can always go back and edit the payment once it's a manual payment that's been added onto the invoice. And when you go back to the invoice list, you'll basically see the status, what was recently updated. And you also have the options under bulk actions. If I wanted to look at another client, you can go to the add a payment option from here as well. And you can add manual payments in bulk. So I had 2 invoices for Joan. I can basically select the date that I received the payment, put in the payment type. So she paid me by check as well. You can choose to apply to all or put in separate information for each one and then save it. Just have a little auto refresh there. So we're going to go back and do that. My apologies. So this is how you would bulk add, just use these ones, a payment manually for an invoice. So we're going to go ahead and choose it for today's date. I'm going to choose it for a check. We're going to apply to all. And we're going to go ahead and save it. You can also send a payment notification email here as well and save. And there you go. So you can add a manual payment for one invoice, as we saw with Conroy, or on the list, you can bulk add a manual payment for multiple invoices for a client. And it's the same thing to kind of go back and edit those if you need to. So things that we've covered is how to create an item for an invoice or manage that list if you have a lot of information on there, how to create a client and how that works, and then how to view it on the reports, as well as how to add a manual payment. So last thing I'm going to show you is once the payment has been added, we're going to go back to the client's profile and we're going to kind of see how that client profile got filled out. So we can go to invoices and we'll see the invoice that was created for Conroy. We also created some expenses, so we can go to the expenses section and see the expenses that have been billed. So all of the information that you'll be tracking for this client will show up under their client profile. And if we look at the statement, you'll basically see a breakdown of what was invoiced, what was paid, and then when that happened. And you can actually send this statement directly to the client from the send button option. So it's very easy to share that information with your client once you have a bit more details filled out. So if there's ever any lingering questions that you may have, I do recommend that you go to the settings gear again, and then go to the need help option. Just say I need support and give us a call. You'll get a helpful support key, which will help us pull up your account a little bit faster and verify your access so that we can help you out. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much again for joining us. I'm going to pass you back over to Conrad to wrap things up.
Thanks, Renee. That was great. I also really appreciate all the questions that came in. I will be here for another 5 minutes to answer any further questions you guys might have. If you've still got any lingering questions or queries after that, though, do feel free to email us at support@freshbooks.com, or give us a call on 1-866-303-6061. We'd also love to get your feedback on what you thought of today's webinar. So I've posted a quick link to a survey in the chat panel. Please take a brief minute to fill this out and let us know how we can improve upon the future webinars. Thanks again, everybody, and stay fresh.